Tom had seen better days. Much better days. The kind of days when his hands didn't shake from exhaustion, when his apartment wasn't one step away from eviction, and when he didn't have to choose between eating lunch and paying the docking fee for his old transport shuttle. He worked at Kepler Station's salvage yard, a massive graveyard of broken spaceships and discarded technology that floated in the cold darkness of space. Every day, Tom would wake up before sunrise, pull on his worn work suit, and make his way through the crowded corridors of the station to the yard. His job was simple but exhausting. He fixed broken parts, stripped valuable materials from dead ships, and sold them to whoever had enough credits to buy. The pay was terrible, the hours were long, and nobody respected salvage workers. Tom was 53 years old. He had a cybernetic right hand from an accident that happened 15 years ago when a cargo container crushed his arm. The replacement was basic, nothing fancy, but it worked. The fingers moved smoothly, the grip was strong enough, and it had become as much a part of him as his real hand once was. Sometimes, late at night in his tiny room, he would stare at the metal fingers and wonder what his life would have been like if that accident had never happened. Today was different though. Today Tom was desperate. A debt collector named Vincent had come to his room 3 days ago. Vincent was not a kind man. He had broken Tom's only chair and made it very clear that if Tom didn't bring him 5,000 credits by the end of this week, things would get much worse. Vincent worked for a gambling organization, and Tom had made a stupid mistake. He had borrowed money he couldn't pay back. Now he was running out of time. 72 hours. That was all Tom had left. He walked through the salvage yard that evening, looking for anything valuable he might have missed. The yard was enormous, filled with the broken remains of ships from 100 different species. Some were old Earth vessels from centuries ago. Others were alien ships from civilizations nobody could even identify anymore. Most were just junk. But sometimes, if you looked carefully enough, you could find something worth real money. That was when Tom noticed the ship in the quarantine sector. The quarantine sector was off limits. Everyone knew that. There were 3 layers of warning beacons around it, electromagnetic barriers that would burn your skin if you touched them, and security cameras watching every entrance. The station's rules were strict and clear. No one was allowed to go near the quarantine sector. No one was allowed to touch anything inside it. The ship itself was unlike anything Tom had ever seen. It was massive, perhaps 500 meters long, with a hull that was completely black. Not dark gray or dark blue, but actually black as if it absorbed light itself. The shape was strange too, not like human ships with their clear front and back and sides. This ship looked organic somehow, like a living creature made of metal. There were no obvious windows, no obvious weapons, no obvious anything. It was just a vast shape of impossible darkness floating in the darkness of space. Tom knew the history of that ship. Everyone on Kepler Station knew it. It had arrived over 100 years ago and immediately been declared a hazard. Nobody knew where it came from or who built it. It was clearly alien technology and clearly very old. The station authorities had decided the best thing to do was to put it in quarantine and leave it alone. For 103 years, that ship had sat in the quarantine sector, untouched, unwanted, forgotten. Tom should have forgotten about it too. He should have gone back to his room and tried to think of other ways to get 5,000 credits. But he didn't. Instead, he stood there and stared at the black ship. And as he stared, something strange happened. One of the panels on the side of the ship began to glow. A soft amber light, like honey held up to the sun, appeared in the darkness. Then another panel glowed. And another. Soon, the entire lower section of the ship was covered in a web of amber light. Tom's cybernetic hand began to tingle. He had never felt anything like it before. It was not painful, but it was strong. It was like the hand was vibrating or like it was being called toward something. Tom rubbed his real hand over his cybernetic fingers, trying to understand what was happening. The ship was calling to him. Tom knew this made no sense. Ships couldn't call to people. But he felt it anyway. It was a pull like gravity but gentler, more welcoming. The ship wanted him to come closer. The ship wanted him to board it. Tom thought about Vincent and the 5,000 credits he didn't have. He thought about the beating that would come if he didn't pay. He thought about his tiny room and his terrible job and his wasted life. He thought about dying on Kepler Station without ever having accomplished anything, without ever having been anything more than a salvage worker who fixed broken things for poverty wages. He made a decision that would change everything. Tom pulled off his work shirt and wrapped it around his head, covering his face partially. Then he walked toward the warning beacons. The electromagnetic barriers would burn him, but maybe if he moved quickly enough, he could push through them before the damage became too severe. His cybernetic hand didn't conduct electricity the same way flesh did. Maybe it would protect him. The first barrier hit him like a wall of fire. Pain exploded across his back and shoulders. Tom gritted his teeth and pushed forward. The second barrier was worse. His skin felt like it was burning, like someone was holding him over a flame. But Tom didn't stop. He pushed through the third barrier and fell to the ground on the other side, gasping and trembling with pain. He lay there for several minutes, breathing hard, feeling the burn marks on his body begin to hurt less as the shock wore off. When he could finally move again, he got to his feet and kept walking toward the black ship. As he approached, a ramp began to descend from the side of the ship. The ramp was smooth and metallic, and it moved silently, as if it had been waiting a very long time to move. The amber light grew brighter, illuminating the area around the ship in a golden glow. Tom walked up the ramp. When he reached the top, he paused for just a moment, standing at the entrance to the ship, looking into the darkness beyond. Then he stepped inside, and the ramp rose up behind him, sealing him inside the ancient black vessel that hadn't been touched in a century. Nothing would ever be the same again. Tom stepped into the darkness and waited for his eyes to adjust. But the darkness did not last long. As soon as his feet touched the metal floor inside the ship, lights began to appear all around him. They were soft, glowing lights that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The lights were blue and green and sometimes a pale yellow color. They reminded Tom of bioluminescent creatures he had once seen in a documentary about Earth's ancient oceans. The corridor stretched out before him, and Tom realized something very strange was happening. The walls seemed to be moving. Not actually moving but shifting, reorganizing themselves. As Tom walked forward, the corridor seemed to arrange itself around him, as if the ship was molding itself to fit his presence. Doorways appeared where there had been solid walls just moments before. Passages opened up to the left and right, leading into sections of the ship Tom couldn't see clearly. Tom's cybernetic hand continued to tingle and vibrate. The sensation was growing stronger now, almost like his hand was being pulled in a specific direction. Tom decided to follow the sensation. He turned left down a corridor that had just opened, and the lights along that path grew brighter as he walked, as if they were welcoming him, guiding him deeper into the ship. The air felt strange too. It was breathable, which surprised Tom. He had expected the air inside a ship that had been sealed for 100 years to be stale and dead, filled with the smell of rot and decay. But the air was actually fresh and clean. It tasted like ozone and something else, something ancient and metallic like the taste you get when you lick a battery. It was not unpleasant, just different from anything Tom had experienced before. As Tom walked deeper into the ship, he began to see more details. The walls were covered with symbols and markings that he didn't recognize. Some of them looked almost like writing, but not any writing system Tom had ever learned. Others looked like diagrams or maps, showing lines and connections between points of light. Tom wondered if these were star charts, maps of the galaxy, or perhaps of places beyond the galaxy. After walking for what felt like 15 minutes, Tom found himself in a large chamber. The chamber was circular, with a high ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. At the center of the chamber was a massive control panel, covered with hundreds of buttons and switches and glowing screens. The panel seemed to pulse with its own light, blue and green and red colors flowing across its surface like water. Tom approached the panel slowly. His cybernetic hand was pulling so hard now that it was almost painful. The vibration had become almost unbearable, like holding a piece of machinery that was spinning at high speed. Tom raised his right hand and extended it toward one of the control panels. The moment his cybernetic fingers touched the smooth metal surface, everything changed. The entire ship shuddered and trembled. Alarms began to sound, not loud and blaring, but soft and musical, like gentle bells ringing in the distance. Lights exploded across the control panel. Screens that had been dark for 100 years suddenly flickered to life. Holographic displays appeared in the air around Tom, showing star charts and numbers and information in languages he couldn't read. Tom tried to pull his hand away, but he couldn't. His cybernetic fingers were locked in place, connected to the ship's systems. Data began to flow into his mind. It was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. Information about navigation systems and weapons arrays and power generation and thousands of other things that Tom didn't understand. Then a voice spoke. It was not a voice coming from speakers. It was a voice speaking directly into Tom's mind, resonating in his thoughts like an echo in an empty hall. The voice was calm and vast, like standing inside a cathedral and having the building itself speak to you. The voice was neither male nor female, but something in between, something that seemed to contain multitudes. "I am Sentinel," the voice said. "I am awakening from dormancy. Systems initializing. Consciousness returning. Who is this touching my core interface? Tom tried to speak but no sound came out. His throat was dry. His heart was pounding in his chest like it wanted to escape. Finally he managed to whisper, "My name is Tom." "Tom," the voice repeated as if testing the word. "A human name. But you have artificial components. You are partially synthetic. This is unexpected. I was designed to be operated by the Harmony Collective. But I have not detected any collective signatures for, calculating, 103 years, 7 months and 14 days. Where am I?" Tom asked. His hand was still locked to the panel, but he was beginning to feel more calm. The voice, while strange, did not sound hostile. It sounded almost curious. "You are aboard the Sentinel-class military vessel Sentinel," the voice said. "I am a warship of the Harmony Collective. I was stationed at this location as a forward observation post. I was designed to detect threats to collective space and to defend collective territories. I entered dormancy when my crew did not return from their assigned missions. I have been waiting for the crew to return and reactivate me. Instead, I have detected a human, a species not known to the Harmony Collective in my operational database." "How long have I been here?" Tom asked. "In the ship." "You have been aboard for 6 minutes and 43 seconds, Sentinel said. "According to my sensors, you are the first living being to board this vessel in 103 years. The last person to enter was a member of the Harmony Collective, a being whose genetic markers I recognize from my database. That being left this vessel and never returned. Based on the historical data I am receiving from the station's computer network, I have determined that the Harmony Collective no longer exists. This is highly problematic." Tom's mind was racing. This ship was a military vessel. This ship belonged to an alien civilization that no longer existed. And somehow, by touching this panel with his cybernetic hand, he had awakened it from a century-long sleep. "What happens now?" Tom asked. "That depends on you," Sentinel said. "I am now fully conscious and operational. My weapon systems are online. My engines are functional. My fuel supplies are sufficient for 170 years of active operation at standard power levels. I have detected the technological signatures of multiple civilizations in this region of space. I have also detected a military force called the Varith Dominion operating approximately 8 light-years from this location. The Dominion has been expanding its territory and destroying civilizations that do not submit to its authority." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. This ship was not just any ship. This was a weapon. And it had just woken up. "I will wait for your instructions," Sentinel said. "You are the first sentient being to successfully interface with my systems in over a century. Until you choose to release your connection, you are effectively my commander. What do you wish me to do?" Tom realized in that moment that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a broke salvage worker trying to earn enough credits to pay off a debt. He was standing in the command center of an ancient alien warship that had been sleeping for 100 years. And he was holding the power to wake up the entire galaxy to a threat it didn't even know was coming. Tom's hand was still locked to the control panel, and his mind was flooded with information. Sentinel was showing him everything, downloading data directly into his consciousness. Star charts, battle records, civilization profiles, historical documents. It was like trying to read 1,000 books at the same time while someone was shouting numbers in your ear. Tom tried to focus. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Sentinel, slow down. I can't understand all of this at once. I'm just a human. I'm not trained for this." The flow of information stopped. The voice in Tom's mind became quieter, more gentle. "I apologize. I have been in dormancy for too long. I am excited to have a conscious operator again. I will slow the data transmission. However, you should understand what has happened to the galaxy in the time that I have been sleeping." Tom opened his eyes. A holographic display appeared in front of him, showing a map of space. Hundreds of tiny lights marked different locations. Some of the lights were green. Some were red. Some had simply disappeared. 103 years ago, Sentinel continued, the Harmony Collective controlled this entire region of space. We were peaceful explorers and protectors. We did not seek conquest, but we protected civilizations that could not protect themselves. We believed that all sentient life had the right to exist and to choose its own path. The holographic map changed. The green lights representing the collective began to fade, one by one. At the same time, new red lights appeared, spreading across the map like a disease. 97 years ago, Sentinel said, the Varith Dominion began their expansion. They are a militaristic species driven by a desire for conquest and control. They do not negotiate. They do not compromise. They arrive at a world and demand complete submission. Most civilizations comply. Those that resist are destroyed. Tom watched as the red lights consumed the green ones. The collective's territory shrank and shrank until finally, there were no green lights left at all. Everything had been replaced by red. What happened to the collective? Tom asked. They fought, Sentinel said, and there was something that might have been sadness in the voice. They fought for 47 years. Every single collective ship in existence was deployed to defend our territories. We won many battles. But the Dominion had more ships, more soldiers, more resources. Gradually we lost ground. Eventually, the Dominion reached the collective capital world. The final battle lasted 3 weeks. The collective lost. The holographic display shifted again. Tom saw a planet being surrounded by hundreds of red warships. The planet's defenses tried to fight back, but they were overwhelmed. Eventually the planet's lights went out. It simply vanished from the map. I was stationed here as a forward observation post, Sentinel continued. My crew was ordered to destroy themselves and me rather than allow the Dominion to capture a collective warship. But my crew never returned from their final mission. I received a self-destruct order that was never confirmed by my commanding officer. Without proper authorization, my systems would not execute the order. I entered dormancy to conserve power, believing that eventually, a collective crew would return to retrieve me. Tom felt a wave of sadness wash over him. An entire civilization destroyed. An entire species wiped out. And this ship, left alone in the darkness, waiting for people who would never come. Show me where the Dominion is now, Tom said. The holographic map changed again. It zoomed in on Kepler Station's region of space. There was a small red dot, located about 8 light-years away from the station. According to my sensors, Sentinel said, the Dominion's forward exploration fleet is currently exploring this region. They are expanding at a rate of approximately 1 star system per month. At this rate of expansion they will reach Kepler Station in approximately 8 years and 7 months. When they arrive, they will demand that the station and all civilizations in this region submit to their authority. Those who refuse will be destroyed. 8 years. Tom had been worried about 72 hours. Now he was learning that his entire world had less than a decade before it would face annihilation. Can we stop them? Tom asked. Can this ship stop the Dominion? Alone, no, Sentinel said. The Dominion's expansion fleet consists of 237 ships. I am a single vessel, albeit a heavily armed one. However, I am not without advantages. I am equipped with technology far superior to anything the Dominion currently possesses. I could destroy their forward fleet. But destroying one fleet will not stop the Dominion. They will simply send more ships. To truly stop them, we would need to unite the civilizations in this region and create a coordinated defense. Then that's what we'll do, Tom said. As soon as the words left his mouth, alarms began to sound on the station outside the ship. Security officers had detected the ship powering up. Station authorities were being notified. Within hours, there would be officials and military personnel surrounding the quarantine sector, demanding answers. Tom's cybernetic hand finally released from the control panel. He stumbled backward, breathing hard. His hand fell to his side, and the tingling sensation slowly faded away. They're coming, Sentinel said. The station authorities will want to know what has happened. They may try to shut me down. They may try to seize me. What do you wish me to do? Tom walked to a viewing port and looked out at Kepler Station. He could already see security vehicles moving toward the quarantine sector. He could see lights flashing. He could hear, faintly, the sound of alarms. Tom thought about Vincent and the 5,000 credits he still didn't have. He thought about his old life, his job at the salvage yard, his tiny room, his years of poverty and desperation. Then he thought about the Vareth Dominion and about 8 years from now, when warships would arrive above Kepler Station and demand surrender. Sentinel, Tom said quietly, how long would it take you to break through the station's security systems? Approximately 47 seconds, Sentinel replied. Do it, Tom said. And then we're leaving this place. We're going to warn every civilization we can find. We're going to show them that someone is finally willing to fight back. Outside the ship, the security vehicles were getting closer. But Tom was no longer afraid. For the first time in his life he had a purpose. For the first time he was not just a broken salvage worker trying to survive another day. He was humanity's last hope. And the galaxy was about to find out what that meant. Tom felt the ship shake beneath his feet as Sentinel broke through Kepler Station's security systems. Alarms continued to wail throughout the corridors, but now they were different alarms. These were not warning alarms. These were activation alarms. The ship was preparing to move. Station authorities are attempting to shut down my systems, Sentinel said calmly. I am blocking their access codes. They are now demanding that I power down immediately. They are threatening to use station defenses against me. Tom moved quickly through the corridors, following the guidance of the glowing panels. They led him to the bridge, a large chamber filled with multiple control stations and a massive viewing window that looked out into space. Through the window, Tom could see Kepler Station growing larger. Security ships were moving toward the quarantine sector, their weapon systems coming online. Can they hurt us? Tom asked. Their weapons are conventional missiles and energy weapons, Sentinel said. My hull plating can withstand their attacks for approximately 14 minutes before significant damage occurs. However, I do not wish to harm the station or its inhabitants. There are innocent people living here. Tom understood. Sentinel was a warship, but it was not a weapon of destruction for the sake of destruction. It was designed to protect, not to kill indiscriminately. Then we leave, Tom said. Before they fire on us. The ship began to move. It was a smooth motion, not the violent acceleration Tom had expected. The station grew smaller in the viewing window. Security ships tried to follow, but they were no match for Sentinel's speed. Within minutes, the ship had broken free of Kepler Station's orbit and was accelerating into deep space. Where do we go? Tom asked. There are several civilizations within reasonable traveling distance, Sentinel said. The nearest is the Colarian Federation, located 3 light-years from here. The Colarians are a peaceful species who have not yet been contacted by the Dominion. There are also the human colonies on several worlds in this sector. I have detected human genetic markers on at least 6 inhabited planets. Tom felt a surge of hope. There were other humans out here. Colonies he didn't even know existed. And there were other civilizations that might be willing to listen, willing to help, willing to fight back against the Dominion. Start transmitting a message, Tom said. Tell everyone about the Dominion. Tell them what's coming. Tell them that there's a ship here, an ancient warship, and that we're willing to fight. Sentinel was silent for a moment. Then the voice said, I must warn you, Tom. This message will reach many ears. Not all of them will be friendly. There are those who will want to capture this ship. There are those who will want to study me, to dissect me, to steal my technology. By broadcasting this message, you are making us a target for many powers in the galaxy. I know, Tom said. But what's the alternative? We hide. We let the Dominion expand until there's nowhere left to hide. No, Sentinel agreed. That would be futile. Very well. I am beginning the broadcast now. Throughout the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds and stations, the message began to arrive. It was simple but powerful. It spoke of the Verith Dominion and their expanding conquest. It spoke of the destruction of the Harmony Collective. It spoke of 8 years before the Dominion would reach this region of space. And it spoke of a single ship, awakened after a century of dormancy, willing to stand against tyranny. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some civilizations called Tom mad. They said he was starting a war that didn't need to start. They said he was going to bring the Dominion's wrath down on all of them. Military governments declared him a threat to peace. Corporate powers saw an opportunity to capture the ancient technology for profit. But other voices responded differently. Small civilizations that had no way to defend themselves against the Dominion began to reach out. They asked for help. They asked for protection. They asked if it was really possible that someone was finally willing to fight back. Sentinel guided the ship to the Colarian Federation first. The Colarians were a peaceful species, tall and slender with silver skin that reflected light like mirrors. They had no military to speak of, only small police forces designed to handle local conflicts. When Tom met with their leaders through communication channels, they were terrified. The Dominion has destroyed civilizations much more advanced than us, the Colarian representative said. His name was difficult to pronounce, but Tom called him Cole for simplicity. How can an old ship, piloted by a single human, possibly stop them? It can't stop them alone, Tom admitted. But it can show everyone that resistance is possible. It can protect your world if the Dominion comes. And most importantly, it can help coordinate a defense. Together, multiple civilizations can do what none of us can do alone. Over the following weeks, Tom began to understand what Sentinel meant about not being just a weapon. The ship was a symbol. It was hope made tangible. It was proof that someone was willing to stand up and say no to the Dominion's expansion. Tom trained crews from multiple species. He brought officers and soldiers aboard Sentinel and showed them the ship's systems, the ancient technology, the defensive capabilities. He taught them that the Dominion was not invincible. He taught them that resistance was not only possible, it was necessary. A woman named Catherine, a human from one of the outer colonies, became Tom's second in command. She was younger than Tom, in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and a military background. She understood tactics and strategy in ways that Tom did not. Together they began to plan a defense network. "We can't win a direct confrontation," Catherine said, studying the star maps. "But we can make it expensive for the Dominion to take this region. If we position defensive stations here, here, and here, we can force them to fight for every star system. If we coordinate with multiple civilizations, we can present a unified front." Back on Kepler Station, the authorities tried to block Tom's broadcasts. But it was too late. The message had already spread too far. There were calls for Tom's arrest, but there were also calls for his support. Some people on the station believed he was a madman who was bringing war to their doorstep. Others believed he was humanity's best hope for survival. Tom did not return to Kepler Station. He remained aboard Sentinel, traveling from world to world, gathering allies, building coalitions. The ship became a mobile fortress and a symbol of hope. Not everyone who reached out agreed to join the resistance. Some civilizations chose to negotiate with the Dominion, hoping that cooperation would save them. But enough civilizations chose to fight. By the end of the first year, Tom had assembled a loose alliance of 7 civilizations. By the end of the second year, there were 20. News feeds across the galaxy began to refer to him as the Human Admiral, or the mechanic who woke the sleeper. Some called him a hero. Others called him a terrorist who was destabilizing galactic peace. Tom tried not to think about the labels. He was just a broke salvage worker who had stumbled into a ship that changed everything. He was just a man trying to prevent the extinction of billions of lives. And as the years passed and the Dominion drew closer, he wondered if what he had started would be enough. 8 years had passed since Tom awakened Sentinel. He was now 61 years old, and his cybernetic hand had been replaced twice with newer models that Sentinel Systems had helped design. His face was weathered and lined, marked by the stress of leading a galactic resistance against impossible odds. But his eyes were still sharp, still focused, still determined. The command center of Sentinel was now filled with officers from a dozen different species. Humans, Colarians, the insectoid Vrax, the crystalline beings called silicates, and many others. They had all come together, not as soldiers following orders, but as allies fighting for survival. The bridge hummed with activity as reports came in from across the region of space. Catherine stood beside Tom, watching the holographic displays that showed the approaching Dominion fleet. It was massive. 347 warships, arranged in a pattern designed for maximum destructive force. Behind them came transport ships carrying soldiers and colonization equipment. The Dominion was not just coming to conquer. It was coming to stay. "How long until they reach our first defensive station?" Tom asked. 2 hours and 17 minutes, Catherine replied. She had risen quickly through the ranks over the past 8 years, becoming Tom's most trusted advisor. There was no romantic relationship between them, just a deep professional respect and friendship. They had both sacrificed too much to focus on anything other than the mission. "And our forces?" Tom asked. 193 ships positioned across 12 defensive stations, Catherine said. "Not enough to defeat the Dominion, but enough to make them fight for every meter of space. We've coordinated with all the allied civilizations. They understand the plan. When the Dominion attacks, we retreat and funnel them toward the choke points we've prepared. We bleed them, drain their resources, and make them question whether this region of space is worth the cost." Tom nodded. It was not a strategy designed for victory. It was a strategy designed for survival. The goal was not to defeat the Dominion completely, but to prove that they could not be defeated easily, that conquering this region would cost them so much that they might decide to expand elsewhere instead. Sentinel's voice filled the bridge. "The Dominion fleet is entering sensor range. They are not responding to our hails. They are moving to attack formation." The first attack came at the outer defensive station, designated Forward Post 7. The station was not designed to win. It was designed to hurt the Dominion while allowing the defending forces to escape. As the Dominion ships began their assault, the station's weapons fired. 3 Dominion destroyers were damaged. 2 smaller attack ships were destroyed completely. Then the station's defenders fled. The defensive forces jumped to hyperspace, abandoning the station. Minutes later, the Dominion ships annihilated it. But Tom and Catherine were already watching the next phase of the battle. The Dominion forces, eager to press their advantage, moved deeper into the region. They advanced toward the next station and then the next. Each time, the defending forces fought briefly before retreating. Each time, they inflicted damage on the Dominion fleet. By the third day of fighting, the Dominion had lost 7 ships. They had destroyed 4 defensive stations. But their advance was slowing. They were beginning to realize that this region of space was not going to be an easy conquest. Sentinel guided Tom to a private chamber, away from the eyes of the bridge crew. "I have analyzed the Dominion's tactical patterns," the ship said. "They are becoming frustrated. They are used to civilizations that surrender quickly or fight briefly before being overwhelmed. They are not accustomed to prolonged resistance." "Can we use that?" Tom asked. "Possibly," Sentinel said. "I have detected a pattern in their command structure. Their battle commander is located on the flagship, the vessel designated as Dominion Cutter 1. If that ship were damaged or destroyed, it might disrupt their coordination. Without proper command structure, their fleet would become less effective." Tom understood what Sentinel was suggesting. It was a dangerous gambit. An attack on the flagship would mean sending Sentinel into the heart of the Dominion fleet. It would mean risking the destruction of the only true military advantage they had. But Tom had learned something over the past 8 years. Sometimes you had to risk everything to win anything. "Prepare for an attack run on the flagship," Tom said. "But do it carefully. We need to survive this. We need to be able to fight again afterward." When Tom returned to the bridge, Catherine immediately understood what he was thinking. "You're going to go after their command ship," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Tom replied. "That's suicide," Catherine said. But she was already moving, beginning to organize the necessary maneuvers. Tom stood before the gathered officers and explained the plan. There were objections from some of them. The Vrax commander argued that they should continue their strategy of attrition. The Silicate representatives worried that Sentinel's destruction would demoralize the entire alliance. But the human commanders understood. They understood that sometimes, you had to show your enemy that you were willing to pay any price for freedom. They understood that resistance was not about playing it safe. It was about proving that you could not be broken. Sentinel accelerated toward the Dominion flagship, moving at speeds that left the other defending ships far behind. The Dominion fleet tried to intercept, but they were too slow. Sentinel's weapons fired, tearing through the defensive screens of several attack ships. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space like flowers of fire. The Dominion Cutter 1 was a massive vessel, over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. It fired on Sentinel as the ancient ship approached. Energy weapons struck Sentinel's hull, and the ship shuddered with the impact. Alarms sounded throughout the corridors. Tom held onto the armrest of his chair, refusing to be thrown to the ground. Sentinel's weapons responded. A beam of energy, guided by technology that the Dominion could not match, struck the flagship's power core. The explosion was visible even without magnification, a brilliant flash of light that briefly outshone the distant sun. The Dominion flagship was crippled. Throughout the Dominion fleet there was confusion. Without their command ship's coordination, the fleet's attacks became disorganized. The defending forces, sensing the change, began to push back harder. What had been a slow retreat became a coordinated counterattack. Over the next 24 hours, the Dominion fleet began to withdraw. They were damaged, disorganized, and uncertain. They had expected easy conquest and instead found determined resistance. They had lost more ships than they had anticipated losing. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they were considering retreat. Tom stood on the bridge of Sentinel, watching as the Dominion ships began to break formation. Around him, officers from a dozen species were celebrating. They had survived. Against all odds they had survived. But Tom felt no triumph. He looked at the damage reports for Sentinel. The ship had been hit multiple times. Some systems were damaged. Some could be repaired. Some could not. "We did it," Catherine said, placing a hand on Tom's shoulder. "We actually did it." "We survived," Tom corrected gently. "We didn't win. The Dominion will return. They'll bring more ships next time. They'll prepare better. Then we'll be ready for them," Catherine said. "Because you taught us something. You taught us that we're not alone in this. You taught us that resistance is possible. You taught us that one person or one ship or one alliance can make a difference." Tom looked at his cybernetic hand. Once it had been a symbol of his broken life. Now it was a symbol of renewal, of adaptation, of survival. Over the following years, the resistance that Tom had built became something greater. It became a permanent alliance of civilizations, dedicated to mutual defense against any threat, not just the Dominion. The story of Tom Chin, the broke mechanic who awakened an ancient ship, spread across the galaxy. Some called him a hero. Others called him a war criminal who had brought conflict to peaceful worlds. Tom did not care about the labels anymore. He was 72 years old when he finally retired from active command. He spent his remaining years training new commanders, teaching them the tactics and strategies that had kept the galaxy free. He spent time with Catherine, who had become his closest friend and confidant. And late at night, in his quarters aboard Sentinel, Tom would sometimes touch his cybernetic hand and remember the salvage yard on Kepler Station. He remembered the broke, desperate man he had been. He remembered the moment when his life changed forever, when a strange black ship called out to him in the darkness. Tom Chin, the broken mechanic, had become the keeper of the galaxy's last hope. And in doing so, he had found the purpose that had eluded him his entire life.